Okay. I apologise if you are waiting for me. We're trying to sort the stream out. Unfortunately, Google Hangouts is not very easy to get going. And right now, I have no idea if I'm streaming or not. I think I am. I am trying to make this work. It's telling me that nobody is seeing it, so aha! I'm told that I can see it and I can be seen, so that's a good start. And when I say good start, I mean really awful start of 20 minutes of nonsense. Okay, if you can see me, Mike says he sees me. Okay. I'm not sure what stream this is. I think this is my main stream. So let's see if we can get to a chat. Excuse me. And yeah, so Mike, if you can hear me, this is the stream that I've just posted there. And people should be able to see what's happening. We'll wait for some people to come along. There's a couple of people coming already. Whoa! It looks like we may have actually got something working at last. I'm going to give it a couple of seconds before I start saying things like I'm really sorry and all the rest of it, because I'm getting some comments saying things like, "Are you dead?" No, I'm not dead. I'm really sorry. It's just one of those things where streaming is horrible. Okay, so I'll just explain what happened for those that do streaming. There's a couple more people joining. Basically, I use QBS to stream, and normally I stream to Twitch, which works fine. And we decided that, in our wisdom, that it would be a good idea to use YouTube and Google, because they are the de facto standard for streaming. And of course, that did not work very well at all, and it managed to break QBS a little bit, and then all sorts of horrible things happened as well. So those of you that were going to join on the chat, and there are quite a few people, I apologise in advance that we messed things up. That's the way these things are. I'm going to close a couple of windows here because I don't need them. And I'm going to make a mental note to go ahead and learn how to use the encoding software properly with the stream. Okay. Ian, can you post the URL in the event chat? Yes, I can. Let me just go over to that. 1 second. And go to the chat. Okay. I'm the only one that can post there. Yes, it's great, but I've actually got to get to that event. And I have so many windows open with the chat on. 1 second. Sorry, everybody. I know this is like the worst stream ever, and I apologise in advance for that. I cannot get to that stream now because I've done something horrible to it. If I was in charge of Google, I would take all the people that did this live streaming software and go and put them in a room and tell them to fix it. Come back when you've got it sorted out, because I'm not a stupid person, but you know what? This stuff is really not easy to get used to. I thought I knew what I was doing, but apparently not. My events. And oh, Mike, I can't get to the stream. I'm so sorry about this. Okay. I'm just letting everybody know that we're going. Yeah. There are lots and lots of people waiting there. Okay. Everybody's coming over by the look of it. Okay, we're going to start in a couple of minutes. I'm absolutely positive now that we've got at least some streaming working. I'm really sorry about this. Do you know what? The most annoying thing for me is that I'm very, very pedantic about setting these things up, and already I see a ton of questions as well, and and see, you were all told, go away and ask these questions in advance, and that way I could prepare the answers. The thing is, if you're a programmer and you guys are struggling with it, chances are I might even struggle with it as well, unless I've actually come across that problem. There's a couple of people here. Somebody called Curmudgeon is asking if there's programmatic ways to get the version number of your non-Windows app. I don't think you can, and the reason is that getting the version number, I'm assuming you're talking about the bundle version number under iOS and Android, and as far as I'm aware, you can't do that. And the reason is that there are lots of different ways of accessing internals in your program, but not one that's sort of surfaced in a sensible way. I can Google it and I'll answer that question another time, because I'm sure there is a way of doing it. I assume that what you're trying to do is show the version number on a screen somewhere, so that when you get a support call or something, or some other message, you can say, go to this part of the screen and show the version number, so that you know what version number they're using. That happens a lot. I'm sure there are people doing it, so I'm guessing that there's a way of doing it programmatically. I know people mostly hard code constants and things like that, but it must be possible to get the IDs out of there. Version numbers in iOS and Android are quite significant, because if you change version numbers in iOS, you can cause yourself a lot of problems if you've already actually issued that that app, that .ipa. I know there's plenty of people out there that get problems all the time with they do things like try and increment the build number, and then it triggers updates and stuff like that when they don't want to. I'll look that up and find out. I'll make a note of that. I'm just going to actually put a screen up so that we've actually got some Delphi stuff, so that we know what we're doing. What other questions have we got? It looks like most of the people that were on the other stream have joined now. If anybody is still on the other stream and you can hear me on this stream, if you can post a message and just say, hey, we're over here. I've done it once already, but I'll do it again. What else have we got? I posted the URL of the live chat. You're the only one person. Yeah, I've done all that. Permissions error that occurs with Android 8 and Delphi 10.2.3. What's the permissions error that you're getting? If someone would like to ask that question again. I'm not sure. Is this to do with SDKs, or is this to do with something else? Because there are some known problems with some of the SDKs, and with 10.2.3 in particular, Android SDK 26 I think doesn't work at the moment. If you sign up to the beta, they are saying that that's going to be supported, and they will allow you to have an exception for the beta where you can issue Android apps that will work with the latest version of the API, and put it into the App Store, which is unusual. Normally they say, oh, if you use the beta, then you can't go off and use that version to create apps. Remember that the Academy originally is the whole of this bootcamp week is supposed to be really aimed, or not all the weeks actually, is supposed to be aimed at the Delphi Community Edition, and there are some restrictions on that which are available on the Community Edition page, and one of those is about how much you can earn before you have to use a different version of Delphi. Now, assuming you're just starting out and just starting to create some Android apps, you're probably not going to have a problem there with the restriction on the amount of income that you can get. But if you sign up to the beta, I'm not quite sure what the restriction will be. One would assume that it's the same as the community edition, because that's what you're entitled to from a license point of view. The beta expires, so beware of that. If you write something that only works in the beta, the apps will not expire, but the beta IDE itself will expire, and then you won't be able to actually open your code that you've released out to the Android Google Play Store and work on it once it's expired. So my personal feeling is that is a really bad idea to try and write apps that you can't actually then go back and edit if you're going to take people's money for it. The limit, I think, is $10,000 income, which actually sounds like a lot of money, but if you're writing Android apps and you're only charging 99 cents or whatever the equivalent would be, in pounds 99 pence or something like that, you've got to write and sell a lot of apps at 99 pence before you can make any money, because once Google have taken their cut, which is 30%, you're going to be selling more than 10,000 copies of your app before you actually make it enough money that you're breaking the limits on the community edition. But even so, if you go and swap over to the beta and accidentally use some non-CE features, beware that you might have a problem once the beta expires. But at least you will be able to create Android latest SDK apps. What other questions have we got? SQLite app in an iOS simulator. Yes. To be honest, I don't use SQLite, so I don't know, but the iOS simulator is not great. If you're going to write apps, I really strongly suggest that you use real devices. I don't know for certain if SQLite works on the iOS simulator. I'm surprised it doesn't. But that wouldn't be the first time that there's been issues with the iOS simulator. Did you try using it on an actual device? This is Alexandre Costa. Does it also go wrong on a real device? Because if it doesn't go wrong on a real device, then it's almost certainly the simulator. There's all sorts of things that just crash on the simulator. I don't like simulators. Android simulator definitely is a waste of time. I have no end of problems with that, and only use real devices. And in fact, if you see my screen at the moment on the stream, you'll see that I've got real devices here. So obviously Windows isn't difficult. I'm actually running 64-bit Windows, but I was testing some 32-bit stuff. An Android device, this is a real device, Kindle Fire, which I've got hooked up, and I'm going to go through and play around with the moment. And iOS Simulator, because rather annoyingly, my phone updated to a version that I couldn't support on my Mac. And I did use Mac in Cloud to try and be able to connect that device and do it, but for technical reasons, I couldn't make it work. It's not Mac in Cloud's fault. It's kind of my fault for picking the wrong plan. I discovered that with Mac in Cloud, if you're going to actually use the CE edition, and in fact, this is the Enterprise edition, they do have PA Server version 19 on the Mac in Cloud, but it actually doesn't work with the latest patches, which is what I had. And in order to install those latest patches, they will do it. They're working with me at the moment. They're emailing me to. We've got a little conversation going on to resolve that. But when you go and look at macincloud.com and look at their plans, the type of plan that you would need to deploy apps with the version of PA Server that's on them would be what they call their managed server. Let me just find that. I just changed their page. Oh, very interesting. Here plans. Here we go. Pull this over. This is macincloud.com. Again, I have no affiliation with these people whatsoever. I don't get any money or anything, and I'm sure they don't even say thank you if you sign up for them. But if you've got a Mac and you want to test it, they have some very interesting plans here that allow you to basically design iOS apps without having an iOS, a Mac to do it. It's extremely useful. For $1 an hour, you could actually be running PA Server on here with Xcode already configured, and then in your settings in your IDE, when you go into the iOS connection here, pull that up. Where's that gone? You would actually put in the IP address of the Mac in Cloud server, which they give you, put in the password that you need to set up on the PA server on the Mac in Cloud, and off you go, and it works fine. It's quite remarkable, really, how they can do it. It is slower. I've got a 1 GB fiber connection, and I didn't find too many problems, but it was slower than having a machine directly connected. So that's macincloud.com. Good service. Definitely worth it. But if you're going to do it, then you probably need to have a dedicated server, which costs you roughly $49. The reason is you then get admin or root permissions, and you can then update the PA server to whatever you need. If not, the PA server that they've got installed on their managed servers, which means that they install everything, you don't get a root permissions. They will update them for you if you ask them nicely. If you email them and say, I need this version, they will do it. And they do try and keep up to date. I moaned at them because I didn't think version 19 was on there, which is the version that works with Delphi XE10. And they had it fixed in 2 minutes and said, here it is, it's already on there. And then the version that I had was no good. I said, you need the latest version, and they upgraded that as well. So quite responsive technical support. Yeah, quite impressed as a company. Someone saying, what is this? This is the live chat for the Delphi Embarcadero Delphi Bootcamp. I will pull up the link if people do not have it. I will put it on the screen. So if you are thinking about writing mobile apps and you're just starting out, then if you go to this link, embarcaderoacademy.com, you can sign up for free. It's completely free. You can download the Delphi Community Edition, which is completely free. And this will allow you to develop Windows apps, iOS apps, Android apps, and Mac apps. So you can design for the iPhone, you can design for the iPad, you can design for a Mac, and you can design for Windows, all on one machine with one set of code. And it's extremely useful. I am a Embarcadero Delphi MVP. If you go to this course and pick week 3, which is in here, which is me. This is the chat for week 3, mobile and multi-platform concepts. But the other people that are coming up and the people that have gone before me are much more knowledgeable than me. Kerry Jensen's a very well-known speaker. Marco Cantu is actually, I think, the product manager for Embarcadero. Very smart guy, very well known in the Delphi area. Andrea Magni actually taught me some things about GUI fundamentals. I thought I knew all sorts of stuff, but he taught me some things I didn't know. Alan Fletcher, Cesar Romero, Olaf Monyen, and then me again in week 8. In week 8, I'll be talking about the different types of third-party components that are available. There are billions and billions of them. Really, the great thing about Delphi is 9 times out of 10, you don't have to write any new code to do something pretty. There's usually a component to do it. This screen that you see on the stream at the moment is actually using all the built-in components. It doesn't use any third-party components, but there are plenty of really exciting third-party components that allow you to do almost anything you can imagine. Even one where you can write Delphi code and produce web apps from it, from TMS, which I'll be talking about in week 8. Lots of database components to get you to connect to things like Oracle and MySQL and SQL Server. Lots of components for doing things like Gantt charts and Kanban boards and stuff like that. I cannot say enough good things about Delphi in terms of rapid application development. A very fast way of getting things up and running. I'm a lazy developer, but I'm a very prolific developer. I write a lot of code and work on a lot of apps every year, and I'm talking 60 or more different apps. Sometimes I could be working several months on one app, and sometimes I could be doing 3 or 4 apps in 1 week. Just depends on what's happening. But very prolific. But as I say, I'm quite lazy, and the great thing about that is that Delphi is my superpower and lets me be lazy. So most of the people who are on chat, I think, are probably already Delphi programmers, so they know what's happening. Let's have a look at some more questions. SQL Server we've addressed. I have a problem with the edit in Droid. When I tap the text, which should show the cursor, the paste pop-up menu is shown instead, when it should be only shown with a long tap. What setting do I set? Sounds like you set a setting that you shouldn't, because that doesn't happen for me. Is that Ivan or Iwan? I'm not sure. I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. Iwan Yadi singing. Can you email me? My email is ian.barker@gmail.com. You can see it on the site. Email me and we'll have a chat offline and see what's going on there. You can probably show me some example code or something like that and see what's happening. Who else have we got? Not an API or a beta problem. Can't open socket permission denied. Xteam when trying to run the app in debug mode. Okay, the reason you're getting that is your firewall's blocking the port. When you're trying to run an app in debug mode, and you don't say whether it's iOS or anything like that, but I'm guessing it's from the firewall outwards. The point at which you're doing this connection here, if you're talking about iOS or OS X, you must have this port open in your firewall. Now, usually I don't have a problem, and I don't recall having to do something specific in the firewall. but it would not surprise me that this port and the traffic is blocked. And funnily enough, Macintosh Cloud have just emailed me as well saying they've resolved the problem with the PA server. Yeah, you've got to open this port. There's a two-way communication, and it's got to go both ways. So I'm guessing based on the error message you're showing, that's what it is. Permission denied, cannot open socket. It definitely sounds like a firewall issue, as straightforward as that. And that's someone called Curmudgeon, which is great now. I wonder who you are. Someone says they love birds and respect all animals, but it's very disturbing when you're on the other side of the line. Yes, I understand that. Unfortunately, I can't move them anywhere. I apologise that I've got these little parakeets in the background, and when I recorded the video, we didn't have that problem. In fact, I had to do it very late at night, so none of the birds were squeaking. I also live in Texas, where there are an awful lot of wildlife, and couldn't even sit on the balcony and do it because it was too noisy. So someone was just complaining about the birds. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm at home. I don't want to shut them away in a box or something. I don't think they like it. Ricardo Ariano, hi, I use EMS Server 3 in the development environment. Sometimes I get the next error, exception EID socket in module EMS connection reset by peer. That's a networking problem. I'm not an expert on EMS Server. I don't use it, so I would probably ask that question on the community forums. Community.embarcadero.com and see what's happening, but it sounds like the EMS server is either being blocked or your network's dropping or something like that. And that's what Ricardo is asking. Alexander Costa says thanks. I don't know what for, but good, cool. Tethering. We're going to talk about tethering another time. Sunil Aurora. Hello, Snell. He asked about the tethering adapter and saying he wants to use a user-specified IP or with the first active IP on the system. You don't say what you're trying to use, Windows or iOS or something like that. Let's talk about IPs for a minute. Okay, finding the first active IP on Windows, if you do that and bind to it, you're going to get a problem. And the reason is that, first of all, you're making the assumption that you've got absolute control over your machine, and you don't. I work on a product that has a licensing system that uses Ethernet adapters as part of the fingerprint. We all do it from time to time. And we've discovered that, particularly with Windows 10 onwards, but it happens a lot on the laptops, the networking changes massive amount of settings, and if you bind to the first quite active one on your system, I think you're going to get a problem. There's a multiple available, like with VirtualBox. Yes. See, again, you're saying that you're going to bind with the first one available in VirtualBox, and that's not going to work. The tethering adapter, you need to do things slightly differently. I think we'll do a blog post or something like that, because the tethering adapter is very interesting. For those of you who don't know what app tethering is, and we are going to cover it in the components section, but the app tethering allows me to have, for example, a Windows desktop app and an iOS app, for example. I put a tethering adapter on my Windows app, and then have a similar one on my iPhone app. And then I can actually tell the two devices to find each other, and then we can communicate with these devices. The app tethering is literally what it says. It's like they're tied together by magic. It's almost like a kind of virtual networking, virtual private networking. It's a little bit of a dark art, but it is very useful when it's working. There are some very good blog posts about it. Tethering adapter. Let me see if I can find something for you. App tethering. Yeah. This link here talks about the different types of app tethering that you can do. The thing about it is if you think those of you that use Spotify, you've probably if you've ever used Spotify, it has a very cool feature that you can be playing your music on one machine, like this one, for example, that I'm on at the moment, and you can go into the Spotify app on your phone, and when you go in there, you can then control your Windows machine's Spotify playback um, from the phone and the other way around. And it's sometimes a bit annoying, but sometimes it's extremely useful because you can literally use it like a remote control. That's using a form of app tethering where the two devices know about each other automatically, is one of the phrases you could use for it. This article here, which is in the DocWiki, and just search for using app tethering, and talks about how to do that. There is a bit, I thought there was a bit about binding in here. Could be wrong. Yeah, I mean, I would go through here and have a look a bit more, but we'll do a blog post about this because it sounds like it's something that people have a lot of questions for. Right, what other questions have we got? Because this is about multi-device rather than anything else. If we can't get to your question in the live chat, well, we need to answer it online. Yes, we've added a discussion section in the week 3 index. Okay. That's Mike Swindell posting that from Embarcadero Academy. As he says, there's a discussion section that's been added to the end of week 3, and we'll put some discussion in there. And we'll also put some links in. So all of these links that I've got, I'm saving them as we go along. And then we'll have those links on there so that you've got somewhere to go. I didn't want this course to be the definitive answer to everything about mobile, because it's one of these things where we could stream about this for 15 hours and still only have talked about 10 things out of 450 different things you can do. It's a massive subject, and it's so massive that actually in some ways it's created a bit of a renaissance with Delphi. When the XE versions came out, which were the cross-platform versions, there was a definite surge in interest, shall we say, for Delphi and the Object Pascal language, and because all of a sudden you were able to create multi-platform apps with not an awful lot of code. There's an app here which I'm going to show you in a moment that is Windows, Android, and iOS, and it doesn't have any code, but even if I put code behind it, it would all be fully multi device with only one set of code in the background. And this is actually going to be a real app. This is me mocking something up for some people I'm working for. So I wanted to show you, real Delphi being used. I'm having trouble updating. This is another question. I'm having trouble updating deployed files, e.g. a help file associated with my Android app. I may change the file on my PC, save them, and when I deploy them to my smartphone, the file is not updated. Interesting. I don't know why that is. Do you delete the old versions and copy the new versions in, or do you just copy them over the top? I don't know. As long as you've got if you've got them ticked in your deployment manifest, I thought it would work. I don't know about that. I'm sorry. I don't know what the answer is to that. It should just work. I don't get that problem. I have some iOS apps that are used by the visiting nurses in Nebraska, and they include some files in the background that they don't actually know they're using, and they are deployed as part of that, and I update those with different settings from time to time, and that works fine. I've not had that problem, so I don't know what that is. In the next major, this is another question from Azrael Az. In the next major update of Delphi 10.3, it says that they have Android native controls. Is this somehow connected to FireMonkey, or is something that is make to start the project? Well, Delphi 10.3 has not been released at the moment. There is a roadmap that talks about that. I think when they're talking about Android native, there's an option where you can turn off the styling, and you can say that the styling type is native. Is that what they mean, do you think? It could be what they're talking about. Andrea would probably be able to answer that better than me because he's the guy who's an expert with FireMonkey. But I thought that was just an option to say. I can't remember where it is now. Maybe that I haven't got any controls here that aren't. Yeah. So this is a control that could be styled to be native. Okay, and I think it's this. I think you're talking about control platform or styled. And I think if we go to Android, is that what we're talking about? I don't know what the answer is. If someone knows the answer, feel free to post in the chat. But let me just see what happens when we go into here, select this device, and then go into, look at that. Control type styled. We can select platform. Maybe it's not what I think. I don't know is a short answer. I'd need to check that. FMX supports native controls and rendered controls. Oh, okay. So someone's asked this. Dev can choose and mix already support for iOS. Okay, so that is exactly that. So what I just said is actually the case. So if you select platform, then it will actually use the native control. If it doesn't affect all controls, because some of the controls just they're not native versions of them. They're drawn, if you like, by FireMonkey or FMX. But FireUI, I think is now for it. But this label control here, if I was on iOS and I selected platform, none of the styling would work. None of them. And it would be styled by the default iOS style, which is great if you're trying to have an app that looks completely native without any styling. But I think if you do that, then you're losing one of the benefits of. I'm sorry about this bird. Shut up, birds. You're losing one of the benefits of FireMonkey, which is this really good styling and drawing and effects and all the rest of it. If you say control type platform, then all that goes away. But you can have a slightly more authentic look and feel, I suppose, on the platform. Personally, I don't do it. I prefer them to be styled, and then I've got absolute control. If you look at this particular app that I'm laying out at the moment, I have a Word document, and I'm going to just go across here. But this Word document shows what we're hoping to make this app look like. And I can't show you too much because it is effectively an NDA document. But if you look at the previews here, you can see this is a multi-device preview that we talked about in the stream, in the course. And here are the different devices I've got that I can say, well, I want to see what it looks like when they're previewed. And I've got the small iPhone, the big fat iPhone, the not quite so fat iPhone, and the iPad, and so forth. This is the window. Actually, this is Android. This is the Windows look and feel. So you can see the label change there. I want this app to look at least as close as it can be the same on each device. This is aimed at non-technical users, and what this is a launch pad of things that's going to happen when people click on the buttons. Okay, and you can see in the multi-device preview how everything is nicely centered and everything is in the right place. And the reasoning behind that is that I have some things like a scaled layout up top here, so that when you go to a really high-res iPad or iPhone XS, this graphic for the Times standard, which is the name of the product, is going to scale nicely and be big-ish. Likewise, this here is a scaled layout, and we'll scale these graphics larger, and I'll do that in a minute live. I'm going to run it on some real devices so you can see. And this set of controls here is actually a thing called a grid layout, which we touched on briefly. And I talked about the importance of layouts. So what the grid layout does is whatever size this grid layout is, you then say what you want each of the cells, if you like, to be. So I want the height of the item to be 100 pixels high, and the width of it to be 150 wide, so that they're rectangular. And then as many controls as I've got in there, it'll scale automatically. So that's why it looks pretty and why we don't have them spread all over the place. I've also told this particular layout to center, and because of that, it's in the center of each of the screens. Now, the iPad one doesn't look quite right, and I'll fix that. I'll do something with that. But all the others, even though they're quite different physically, fit nicely. I've got a style book on here, so I've styled some of the controls in the background. For example, style settings. I've set a custom label style up so that the label's got a white background with blue text. This is quite important because if you go over to iOS, if you use the default styling, then that won't necessarily work like that. You'll get a black text with a see-through background or something like that. So that would be bad. I don't want it to look like that. I want it to look like this. This is how I've decided the app's going to look on all devices. And that's with the style book with a custom styling. If I just click in there, you'll see that here's label style, and then under the label style is all sorts of things like the text. You know, what do I want the text to be? Well, I want it to be that font color, and I want some background and bounds and things like that set this way. Style Designer, there's some very good videos that explain how to use style books. I could have chosen one of the ready-made styles that are out there. Embarcadero provide a number of different styles like amethyst and a few other things like that. I want this app to be flat and light blue, so it's a personal choice, but there are plenty of things out there that are I've just got a message from Mike, sorry, Embarcadero Academy saying carry on. Yeah, I want my apps to look in a particular way for everything, and that's a good and a bad thing. Some people go, oh no, you can't possibly do that, you can't make them all look the same, it should look different under Android. No, you're mistaking what I'm doing. I'm choosing these controls to be my way of doing things. When I start to put a navigation bar in, and this will be a frame eventually, a T frame, there'll be a navigation bar at the top that allows you to navigate backwards and forwards. And if you know design patterns, there are different types of patterns that allow you to go backwards and forwards through screens. So when they click on the time recorder button, the screen will change to look like a different set of controls, and then there'll be a back button on there. When you click back, it'll come back to this menu screen and things like that. I'll show you that in a second. I'm just going to whip through a few more questions. Support native controls, which is correct. People showing me this. /APT says, I think the birds are great. We like the birds. There's nothing wrong with the birds. It's just they're very loud. Normally, I do audiobook narration, and so I am used to getting no background noise when I record audio. You normally don't hear lots of weird animals in the background making crazy noises. My dogs occasionally wake up and bark at things, and they're not at the moment, so that's a good thing. But I apologise, I'm at home, and I'm doing this in my own time, so I'm not in a studio with nice sound isolation, all those kind of weird things, or in a nice office where I can shut doors and tell people not to bother me. Okay. Curmudgeon's talking about his update again. Copy over the existing files. So if I uninstall my app and then deploy it, I get the new version of the files. Yeah, it sounds like something's not being overwritten. Okay, so Patrick Primatin says when we're talking about files that get deployed, which is part of the deployment process, when you select deploy, he is saying that if he goes ahead and he deploys it outside of the Delphi environment, he's also had that problem, and he thinks it's an Android bug. I'm not so sure. It sounds like a permissions problem. Yeah, it could be an Android bug. Android is obviously a Linux operating system in the background, very customized one, but that's what it is. And yeah, he says, or you can use resources to link your files. Yeah, okay. Curmudgeon's happy, so that's good. Iwan says, why does Delphi Android still start slower than native Android apps? I'll be honest with you, it's improved a lot in the earlier versions of Delphi XE, and we're up to XE 10.2.3 right now, and there will be a Delphi 10.3 in the next few months or whenever the roadmap says it's available. In the old days, if you use something like Delphi XE 3 or 4, it could be very, very slow, and a lot of people complained about it. However, there was a lot of work put into Delphi 10.2 to specifically address performance, and particularly FireMonkey performance. What you're getting with Delphi is always going to be a compromise, and in fact, if you've used some of the other tools out there that are app creators, you'll find that some of those start really slowly as well, and they're using lots of Java libraries in the background to do their magic to, it's a kind of one size fits all solution. There is a lot of runtime that has to start in the background, and I don't know why it's slower, but it's acceptable for performance. I don't think it's that slow. It is slow, but I can go and ask some of the people at Embarcadero and see what they have to say about it. If there are ways that you can tweak the app to make it go faster. You're reading in a lot of resources also at start time. That's going to be a problem. With the native, it went again. He's got lots of questions. With the native control enabled on the next release, will the APK size reduced? I don't know. The thing about the APK size is that the compiler does do optimizing and does try and remove code that isn't used. So I'm guessing if you don't do lots of, if you don't have any style books installed in your app, and you only use native styling, and therefore the code to do other types of things is never called, then yeah, the APK size could be reduced, but I don't know is the short answer. I've not tried it, so I couldn't possibly tell you what the difference is and whether it would be smaller or not. Once someone comes back and says, "Oh, I've produced an app that worked in Delphi 10.2 and now I've done it in 10.3," and they can tell you whether it's smaller or not. That's the short answer. So what I'm going to do, that's the questions we've got so far. Feel free to ask some more as we go along. But I thought I'd just briefly show you this app running on 3 different machines, just so that we can get the general gist of it. I'm guessing from a few of your questions that you've all tried running these apps already, and therefore I might be teaching you to suck eggs, as the old phrase used to be. In other words, I'm showing you something you already do. But on the off chance that some of the people that are sitting on the stream don't know, we're going to just very briefly recap actually getting a multi-device app and using it on multiple devices. So let's start off with Windows. Okay, so what I have to do is go to here and say activate. Okay, and I'm activating the 32-bit Windows compiler settings and all of the other options, and I'm saying I'm going to actually create something that gets created, written out to my machine on a Windows machine, and therefore it's going to create a .exe, not an APK or an IPA. I'm going to do normal mode because I'm not going to go into the App Store, because trying to submit too many apps even in test mode is a bit of a nightmare. And if I hit F9, then what should happen is you should go away, and you very briefly saw it say that it's creating a thing called tspersonalapp.exe, and there's the app, and I think we can near as damn it say that is identical to the preview. In fact, if I hold it up there, you can see they are basically in the same place. And so what that has done at that point is, let's find my app. I pull this over. What that has done when I've hit the F9 key is it's created the tspersonalapp.exe. Okay, and it's sitting on my machine, and if I actually did a compile and did a release mode, it instead of putting the debug folder there, it actually create it in the release folder, and that's your .exe that you can do all sorts of things with, like submit to stores and all the other things. Now what I'm going to do is instead go to the iOS simulator. Okay, again, I have to activate that so that it's now telling the compiler that behind the scenes, the type of compiler it should use is the compiler that creates Android apps. Okay, and if I just check for a second and make sure, yep, that's still running, I'm going to make my iPad 2 active, and that's a simulator. Now, what it's going to do with Windows, you don't need a PA server if you're doing 32-bit Windows, and if you're doing 64-bit Windows, if you're using 64-bit version of Windows, you don't need the PA server at all. But if you're doing iOS, then you do need the PA server, and we covered this in the course. Okay, so this here is the internal IP address of my Mac, which is sitting behind me, and this is the port number and the password of the PA server. Okay, I'm using an old version of the SDK because my Mac is a little bit old, and its version of Xcode is out of date. I've deliberately not updated it because I've got some apps that I need to do some updating on. If I update it, it'll all go bam. But basically, I'm saying it's 9.3. I could have, up to iOS 12 in here, the version 12 of the SDK. This is 9.3, so that's pretty old. But if I target that, I can reach any iPhone. I've actually got an iPhone X, and this app will work absolutely fine on it up until the point at which it updated recently. So I'm saying activate. Now if I hit F9, which is the same as saying run with debugging, okay, you'll see it go off and it's deploying. That means it's going off and it's talking to PA server in the background across my network, okay, and it's sending a bunch of files down to the PA server, the platform assistant, which you can see just at the bottom there, on my Mac. And eventually, in a moment, it's going to run, and I've got a connection here, which I'm going to pull up. Of course, my screen is blanked out whilst I'm waiting. Hold on 1 second. So in the background is PA server, and this is the iOS simulator. PA server up. It's going very slowly because there's lots of stuff going backwards and forwards. So this is the PA server running in the background. Okay, and very soon, all being well, yeah, still compiling. There's a lot going on. I am broadcasting and streaming and remoting into 2 different machines. And final bit, it's going to go, yeah, it worked. 0 warning, 0 errors. And now I get a little message, which you can turn off, saying, by the way, your app is now running on the other machine. So we're doing a swap over to here. Get rid of this. Oops. Oh, come on, don't crash on me. Come on, computer. So here's the app, and it's taking ages to start up on my Mac, and that's probably my Mac more than anything else. And this is the default splash screen. And there's my app. So if we just, again, compare the two, let's pull this over a little bit. You can see it's pretty much the same as it is. This is a scaled view. As you can see here, it's 98% scaled. Because if I do full size on an iPad 2, then it basically takes up more screen real estate than we've actually got on the PC. But this is our app running as if it's on an iPad 2. And you can go on here and do things like rotate left, boo, and the app resizes itself automatically. And we'll do it again. Rotate right, boo. Everything works as it should do, and because we're using the scaling, the T and layout, and all the rest of it, everything's in the right place. And if we just go back to the actual app, you can see that that's the real thing. Now, all very well, but let's just prove that it is actually the real thing. I've hit the stop button, and as you can see, the app stopped working. Okay, now the way that you get the PA server running is not necessarily the most obvious thing in the world. On the Windows machine, I think I showed you in the talk, there's a PA server.pkg, a package. You copy that onto your Mac and then double click it, and it will install it. And when it installs it, it will install PA server in your applications. Now, if I pull up Launchpad, you'll see I've got PA Server Manager here and PA Server 17. It's a little bit of a bug in this, that if you've already got one PA server, then for some reason it doesn't always appear in your mission control. I don't know why that is, but you double click on this once it's running. It'll say, oh, it wants permission to debug, and do you want to go ahead with it? You say yes. It'll then ask you for a password, and if you say yes, you make sure you put the password in the connection on here. In here, with the IP address of your Mac, and the same password needs to be in here on your Mac. Once you do that, you'll find it works. You have to have Xcode installed, and I actually have Xcode installed more than once on this machine. I've got a couple of different versions of it. I've got a beta version and the real version of Xcode. If you're going to debug with a device on your Mac, let's see if I can do this without crashing my Mac, because there's so many things going on. There is a thing that says references. Where is it? Yeah, no, it's not here, is it? It's, oh, here we go. Sorry, devices. You can add your iPhone in. There's a little message that comes up and says, do you want to trust this iPhone, and then do you want to use it for development? You have to do that in Xcode because Apple is a kind of walled garden. But once you do that and allow the device to be used for development, you'll then, in your actual Delphi, you'll see that appear as a device down here, which is the same as this, which is Android. So along here, apart from the simulators, which I've got here, I'd also get something that says iPhone 10X or something like that. Okay. It takes a bit getting used to. It is very fiddly. I can tell you now, everything for iOS seems to take 10 times longer when you've got to do anything. And if you recall, if you've gone through the course all the way through, you would have seen the section where I talked about getting certificates from Apple and having a developer account. 9 times out of 10, you get a lot of problems with the certificates expiring once you've been doing it for a while, and then having to renew them and all the rest of it. That is something you should plan for. It's a real pain in the neck that the certificates expire the way they do, and it's all tied to making sure that you're paying your dues and all the rest of it. Yeah, that's all correct. If we just go into here, iOS. Okay, is it talks to PA server. Okay. What you see, and it will get the actual certificates automatically from PA server. In order to do that, you need to log into your Mac and then go into the section that says certificates, in the preferences in here and in here, and there's a thing that says count. So this is just one of the people I'm working for at the moment. You go in there. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to show my certificate IDs, but you just say download all in Xcode will automatically get hold of your certificates for you. And once they're installed, if you've only got the one set of certificates, you'll find it'll pick them up automatically. For me, it works like this. You have to create an app ID and all the rest of it. But again, this is explained by Apple, and it's beyond the scope of what we're going to do on this course, really, because once you get into that, you need to follow Apple's instructions rather than ours, because Apple change what they want to do from time to time. When you build your apps with PA Server, it builds this .mobile provision and your development certificate into the app. And when you create your app, let's just go into the app. It will create a IPA. Oh, it doesn't do. Yes, it doesn't do it for the. Yeah. Okay. When you actually do the real thing and you say deploy, which is the final step that we didn't actually talk about in there, but when you go to deploy your app, you go into here and there's a little button that says deploy. For iOS and Android, what it will do is bind everything that you've got, all of the images, if you remember in the project settings, the icons for the desktop, because if you notice at the moment when you see my icons on the machine, they are the default Delphi FireMonkey icons. You'll put your own icons in there, but it binds all of these together into a package and creates a .ipa file, which can then be uploaded to Apple. The same thing for Android. It'll create you a DPK, I think it is. I can't remember what the extension is, but creates you a package and puts all the graphics in, and they're basically fancy zip files with some extra bits and bobs in, and puts the certificates in, bind those in, and signs everything with that certificate. So that what it's saying is that you, John Smith, or whoever has you're actually the person that's created this. Okay. Anyway, we don't need to worry about that deployment. So let's just recap as well. Android, because this is kind of cool, because I've got a device sitting next to me with a camera pointing at it. So we're just going to activate the Android package, and I've already got my device. You remember these were simulators, which I really hate. They're very, very, very slow. It's not you, it's not Delphi, it is the simulators. They're notoriously slow. There are some faster, so-called faster simulators, but I tried using them and I had problems with them working. They would crash and worked fast but went wrong. But here's the actual real device, and that is a Fire book or something. Oh, hang on. Well, just one second. It's a an Amazon Fire tablet. That's right. I was trying to think. So here is the actual physical device, and if I move that back just a little bit, you can probably see. Look, it's a real device. Okay, and it's hopefully going to focus on that. So what I'm going to do is go back to here. We're going to say F9 to debug, and you'll remember that it's going to go off and compile it. It's going to create in the background a .apk file. So you see these are libraries that it's creating and linking in. It's a C compiler. Oh, I don't know. Something clever happened in the background. Anyway, just killing time whilst it does it, because, you know, life's short. And talk amongst ourselves and listen to the birds tweeting. And the compiler has finished deploying. And if I now point the camera, here's the app launching. and there it is. So that is the same app that we've got on this this screen here, except it's now running on the actual Fire tablet. Okay. Now, to make it work on a Fire tablet, by the way, I had to basically hack the Fire tablet. It's a well-known thing to do because the Fire tablet's got its own custom version of Android. And whilst I like that, and I like Amazon as a supplier, they're very good, but I wanted to be able to run Android apps. So I did talk about this in the course, but if we just go onto here, I do this with my wrong hand, but there's a section that says device options, and you need to click on this serial number here. I think it's 7 times, and what that will do is then it will enable this option here, which is developer options. When the developer options are enabled, you can then enable the thing that says USB computer connection. I can see from here that you can't see it very well because it's blurry, but you have to take my advice that my word for it that this is actually the real thing. It's just plugged into a USB cable. In fact, just left here is a USB cable. You do need to install the USB driver, which I think I talked about as well in the course. The USB driver, what that does is allows you to actually plug the tablet in and have it plugged into your PC. So what I've got here is I've got this Android tablet with a USB cable going into a USB port on my PC, which is to the left here, and then I'm basically deploying directly onto that PC. So the Android devices plug directly into my PC, the iOS devices plug into the Mac, and that's how you make it work. It's not difficult, it's not rocket science. Now, as you can see, in fact, let's just go back to that device. As you can see, the icons on the apps are the default icons, this kind of weird flame, which is a FireMonkey thing. If you go into project options, there are a bunch of graphics that you need to supply. When you're developing multi-device apps, I would say prepare for a lot of time doing this. Okay. When I do the iOS apps, it takes me hours. There are some apps that you can use. There's some web services that you can use that will create multiple versions of your graphic. So you do your full-size graphic, which I haven't got with me at the moment, but you pick your full-size graphic and then you drop it on this web service, this website. And what it does is then it exports all of the different images that you've got here at different sizes. Then you literally have to go in and say, I'll load that in. Off you go. I think it would be a cool idea to write a tool that would do all this automatically. So if I chose iOS device, you can see there are even more of these graphics. Well, these are all held in your project file. There's a I forget which file it is, but there's some XML that's got all of these entries in there. I reckon I can decode that and write a tool that would do these to resize these. So I've had quite a lot of experience of resizing graphics for web servers and things like that. I wrote some tools for people, and a signature program. I told you I write a lot of apps, but one company, they have their email signatures, and they wanted to get some graphics, drop the icons on, and not have to redo them every time they decided to change their corporate look or bought another company, which they used to do quite a lot. Anyway, lots and lots of these icons, and you'll spend a lot of time doing that. It's very annoying. We've got another question. I have a problem with customizing Starbook on Android, like how to add a star to exiting star for a component like a button. Is there any link to start with? I don't know. I'm not. I don't really do lots of custom stars, to be honest, like that. You would. This is Ewan again asking this question. I would Google for the Starbook and see. If not, There are people that you can ask at Embarcadero if necessary, but I don't know. Is the short answer. When one compiles builds an app that uses other files, e.g., a file containing personal functions, does the resultant application? When you say personal functions, do you mean like units or something like that? I'm not quite sure what your question means. Yeah, if you've written some code, yeah, it includes everything, contains all these personal functions. Oh, I see. You're talking about a unit that's got extra functions in, like, let's say you've got a load of date time functions in there, but you've also got one for muting pet birds. If you don't use the functions that are muting pet birds, then the compiler optimizes and excludes them. If that's what you mean, then yes, they're excluded. The compiler is an optimizing compiler, and it only includes code that is used. Doesn't always work, because obviously there are ways of referencing code without realizing that you're referencing it. But no, it won't include stuff that bits of code that you never ever use. In a way, your question is more of a general development question, because if you're having class files or units that has got code in there that's not being used, it may be that you should refactor those units down into smaller units. And the reason is that good code practice is, if you Google solid, as in SOLID, which is a type of development methodology, I suppose, but it's really just an ethos about how you use, how you write programs. One of the principles of that is the S, which is single use. In other words, a single purpose. In other words, you shouldn't have class files that are doing more than one thing. If it's doing lots of different utility things, then maybe you should refactor that out and be smaller. But having said that, the compiler does optimize and gets rid of the code, so it's not the end of the world. If there's a bunch of code there that's never used, and it can calculate that it's never used, because it's possible to do that with the compiler, then it's not going to make it bigger. But it just depends. You shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't have big utility units that have got tons and tons of code in there that do 50,000 different things. That's not a good idea. I would say that you need to split it down a bit. The free Greenfish Icon Editor Pro will generate the various sizes of icons. Yes, I actually use a product called Xalis, which is on here, I believe. Yep, this one, Xalis Icon Workshop. This is a slightly older version on this machine, but if I pick a graphic, let's choose a graphic from a program that I'm using at the moment, and let's choose let's choose this one. So if I've got a graphic like this, I can then say edit new Macintosh icon project from this image. There are some other things you can do as well, but I think the later version of this is the older version, but the later version will do all sorts of different icons as well. The Greenfish one is not one I'm familiar with, but there's lots of tools out there, but it's not as straightforward as you think, because Apple and Android keep coming out with new devices, and you'll find that there's no 100% definitive answer. With the iPhone XS and the XSR, is it called? Something like that. I forget what the new name is. Both of those are much, much bigger, and the one of them is 6.2 inches high or something like that. There are absolutely no graphics that fit that at the moment, for sure. Now, Greenfish, I'm not aware of that. Let's just go and see what that's called. Greenfish icon. Let's find out what it's called. Okay, this is the one you're referring to. I believe. Open source. Oh, I like it. Very good. Supports animated cursors and managing icon libraries, not just for icons. It's general purpose image editor. Very good. I did not know about this product. Very interesting. Oh, well, there you go. I didn't know about this. I don't know how they've got any screenshots or anything. Log report, downloads, editor pro. Yeah, well. Okay, they don't seem to have like a this is how it works page. Okay, I was hoping for some screenshots or about boxes or something like that. It's a bit sparse, isn't it? Just say, yeah, it'll work and that's it. Okay, very interesting. All right, I didn't know about that, but greenfishsoftware.org. Yeah, thanks for that. That's a pro tip. I'm actually going to probably download that later and use it, see if it's any good. Cool, thank you, Curmudgeon. That's very handy. Right, close that. Okay, do we have any other questions? If we have, feel free to ask them. I have said before, and I'll say it again, if you want to get in touch, then you can email me, and this is probably opening me up to all sorts of spam. And Twitter, I am at. So let's just make that a bit bigger so you can all see it a lot better. Font. How's that? So if you do have any questions, I may not be able to answer them, but I'll just put you in touch with the right people that can answer them. I'm a developer, not a genius. But you feel free to email ian.barker@gmail.com. You can go to my about.com me page as well, which has got some links to my website and things like that. You sometimes see me pop up on Code Rage. I haven't done it for a couple of years, but I think I'll probably be doing it again next time. Depending on how things go. And please follow me on Twitter. I like Twitter the most out of all the social networks. The good thing about Twitter is it's got very good ability to block people that annoy you. Whereas Facebook's a little bit more personal. As you can tell, obviously, because of my British accent and still living in America, I find Facebook useful for keeping in touch with actual real family and people like that, but not so much getting in touch with people that I'm working with and things like that. And I already see a bunch of people follow me, including Pre-Martin Patrick. Oh, Pre-Martin Patrick. I'm guessing that's Patrick Pre-Martin, a French name. There you go. But yeah, follow me on Twitter and we can talk rubbish about Delphi. The next session I'll be doing is week 8 of this course, of this CE bootcamp. I'll be talking about the various components that are available. We debug mode at the moment. Oh, yeah, let's close that. We don't need to do that. And I'll be talking about lots of different third-party controls, like the TMS components, for example, and some of the other more popular ones. There's a lot of them out there. We'll also be talking about the Get It package manager, which I've got a little bit of experience with because I've done a few things to do with CN Wizards, which is a great component as well. It's an IDE plugin. GExperts is another one. They're struggling to catch up with a couple of issues at the moment with Delphi 10.2.3, I think. But we'll be covering all of those types of popular libraries. If there's one that you really want me to try out and give you an opinion on and see how I think it works, email me and let me know. But that's week 8, which I think is sometime in October. Let me find out when that is. I am being a good boy. Promoting myself. Let's see. Embarcadero Academy. Delphi C boot camp. Let's see. Come on, computer, you can do it. I'm also going to start live streaming again. I used to do that before at code.show.com. Here we go. So this is the boot camp. If you're not part of the boot camp and you're watching the live stream, you're probably wondering what on earth is going on and who I am. Go to this, sign up. It's completely free. No one's going to spam you or anything like that. And go to week 3, which is this one, and that's me, Ian Barker. And as I said, October 22nd, week 8 is also me as well. But there are plenty of other good people here. Some of these talks are absolutely fantastic. I definitely recommend this one with Andrea. It's really quite remarkable demonstrations there, including a progress indicator that basically you need to do anything with. No code progress indicator that worked. Very clever, very, very clever. And it was all done with FireMonkeys. Coming out with the book soon, and that will be one of the books I get. And at the end of, if you've not signed up for my course, shame on you, but at the end of my course, there's some links to other books and things like that, and some free books and some resources that I recommend you go to teach you more about Delphi. The thing about Delphi is that it is very, very easy to write programs that are absolutely reliable. And I'm not kidding you when there are tens of thousands of people in the UK that use my programs, and the people that I write for do not have rafts and rafts of support people. One of them has about, I think, 3 or 4 support people, and have over 10,000 customers, and they're not flooded with calls day in day out, and that's because of Delphi. If I wrote it in any other language, I'm a very big fan of C#. I don't hate all languages. I don't like Java very much. But if I wrote it in C#, I'm pretty certain that would not be the case. That I could say it definitely will work every time when I write it, because there are lots of dependencies on the .NET libraries and things like that. And quite often you go to a machine and some dependency has been overwritten by something else. Someone's installed something, something's updated something. They do side-by-side loading of libraries, but even so, it still seems to be a bit of a problem from time to time. I've come across it. I've written some C# programs that are in use behind the scenes with quite a heavy amount of traffic, and Delphi is the thing that keeps working. And I'm not paid by Embarcadero. I'm not under their thumb. I am a big fan, and I do have some special links to that Embarcadero. Some of the guys there are friends of mine, but I'm talking up the product because I think that Delphi is a great product and worthwhile for developers to at least try and write some apps in, because if you do it properly, you'll have one set of source code. Let's go behind the scenes. I'll show you what I mean. You can have one set of source code behind there, okay, and in fact there's nothing to make that app run, and all these different targets: Android, Windows, 64-bit Windows, iOS, OS X, going out to the App Store, all of them being deployed with that same one set of code and this user interface with this multi-device preview. You know what your apps are going to look like. You know how they're going to function. They will not keep crashing. They will not go wrong. They will be very stable. That is something that's almost unique amongst IDE and compiler vendors, which is why I'm still to this day using Delphi to write programs when I could be using other languages. I think it's definitely worth sticking with. Anyway, if there are no more questions, I'm going to go. But I just want to say thanks to everybody for dropping along. There's been quite a few people taking part. There will be a recording, I hope, although to be honest, we had such a problem with this stream that it's not guaranteed. But if you enjoyed the stream, great. Let me know. If you hated the stream, let me know as well with that email that I put up earlier on. I'll try and improve what I did wrong. If there's anything. Okay, thanks very much. I'm going to go now. Bye-bye. That's my dog. Isn't he beautiful? And my wife.